Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. A couple of weeks ago, Nigerians were told that the federal government had suspended the implementation of the RUGA settlement projects, or what is known as cattle colonies, across the country. The idea of the program had been met with a lot of resistance, particularly in the southern parts of Nigeria, where there was widespread belief that it was all a ruse to mask another more sinister program of Fulanization and Islamization of the largely Christian population in the South. What could have been different if enough public enlightenment had been done before the project was embarked upon? The fears of those opposed to it unfounded. Well, for answers to some of these questions and even a lot more, we are now being joined from our Abuja studio by Senator Ita Enang, Senior Special Assistant to President Buhari on National Assembly matters. He will also be giving us an insight into President Buhari's interest in the leadership elections of the 9th National Assembly, among other issues of national importance. Senator Enang, welcome to the morning show.
Welcome to the morning show.
Good morning.
Thank you, and thanks for having me, Ruben, and my sister.
Yes, good to have you too, and thank you very much for honoring our invitation. But let's go straight to business. You seem to have stirred the honest nest in the newspapers yesterday when you were reported to have told a group of law students from Akwa Ibom State who came to visit you that, in fact, 2.2 billion naira had been earmarked in the national budget for RUGA settlement, and that this is more or less a done deal. A lot of people do not understand it. And yesterday when we discussed the subject, I said, well, it sounded as if you were overruling the president on the matter, because the president had said that the policy, the implementation of the policy should be suspended. At what point did the president authorize a return to that RUGA settlement, and what has changed? Is there something we need to know that is not yet in the public domain?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Abati. And let me say that I was addressing a group of law students from Cross River and Akwa Ibom State who are in the Nigerian Law School. And I have a culture of addressing them, of hosting them and explaining some legal issues to them over some years now. And they came and raised the question about the RUGA question. And I told them that the federal government suspended the implementation of the program because there was widespread public misunderstanding, one. Number two, I told them that RUGA is not a Fulani word or a Hausa word or a Nigerian word. It is not even an English word, properly so called. RUGA is an abbreviation of the words rural grazing areas. Then I also, contrary to what was reported, I did not say that the program is being reintroduced or is a done deal. I said that it was in the budget and explaining matters to students who are supposed to know and to be educated on every matter, particularly because there was this question of the religious element that was brought into it, and they were carried away by it, like every other Nigerian. I had to use that opportunity to explain it to them, and they were very happy to know that this was not the position. Please let me go straight to explaining what RUGA is. RUGA is a provision or is an agricultural program which was introduced into Nigeria in 1956 by the English. And to them, it is rural grazing areas. It means RU for rural, G for grazing, A for areas in 1956 before independence. It was a means of bringing to Nigeria the means where the method where livestock is raised in the rural areas in the UK. That's one. Number two, this program and these rural grazing reserves or grazing areas was admitted into the Nigerian law under the Land Use Act, which was made under the President Obasanjo military administration in 1978. You will see in the Land Use Act that you will have to make some land available in the rural areas for as known in that act as grazing reserves by the local government, and if it is in the urban area, by the state government. Now, what the government intended to do by this project is to say that since the cattle route has been closed by handing over lands to the administration of each state and each local government, it is better to have grazing reserves so that livestock can graze there and there can be comprehensive farming. Now, a grazing reserve is not only for cow, it's not for cattle. Grazing reserve is a comprehensive farm settlement called RUGA, in abbreviation, RU for rural, G for grazing, A for area. And what again it is intended to do is to have a big settlement in an area that will be given to by a state government or an area, or even a private citizen who can afford it. It's not only government, where they will create comprehensive facilities for farming. The facilities that will be in a rural grazing area will be, one, schools for the children who will live there, who will be the children of the farmers who will work there. Two, it will provide hospital for those who will work there. Three, it will provide residential buildings for persons who will work there. Four, it will provide rural roads and water facilities. Six, it will provide slaughter houses for those animals that are certified fit to be there. It will also have veterinary clinics where you will have veterinary doctors who will test or treat these animals when they are sick. It will also have water body around there where the cow, goats, and other things that are raised there will go to have water. Again, please, let me conclude this. It is not only cattle that will be in this grazing reserve. You will have goats, cow, sheep, fish in the water body. You'll have snellery. You'll have anything that anybody who wants to raise farm goes there. So that instead of taking cow and making or goats and making it enter into people's lands, you can take it to this area. And this cow and this thing is not going to be owned by the government. It's going to be those who have cow, goats, sheep, they can take it there to graze. I can take your question, sir.
Okay, Senator, in the face
finally,
of it...
it is not only Fulanis that are to work in these places. It is those who are trained as veterinary doctors, as doctors who will be. It is those who are raising animals as domestics. It is those who are raising goats, which is not only Fulanis. Akwa Ibom people raise goats. We raise cow. We rear other animals.
Senator Enang, are you saying, in one word, that the reports in the papers yesterday did not quite reflect your interaction with those law students and that you were misrepresented? You were quoted out of context. Did I hear you saying that? So.
In one of the papers, yes, please. In one of the newspapers, it was reported, one of the national newspapers, it was reported that I said that the states in the South should give land for RUGA. First of all, I did not say the state in the South should give land for RUGA. I said that they should try and understand what RUGA is. If they understand that RUGA is rural grazing area, and that RUGA is just an abbreviation for what it is, that they will even be looking for it. One, the federal government program on RUGA does not include any of the states in the Southeast. It doesn't include any of the states in the Southwest. It doesn't include any of the states in the South-South. And this program was approved in the budget. It was also the emergency one taken as a security measure to arrest the farmers' herders clash in the Middle Belt and part of South, Northeast, Northwest. The one that was approved by the Federal Executive Council on May 8, 2019. I explained that to students. So it was misrepresented to say that I said that they should give land. No, because no states in the Southeast, no Abia State, Imo State, Ebonyi State, Anambra State, and Enugu State is not involved. Cross River, Akwa Ibom, Rivers, Bayelsa, Delta, and Edo in the South-South are not involved. Lagos, Ondo, Ogun, Osun, Ekiti, and other states of the Southwest are not involved.
Thank you for this clarification,
that I'm likely to mention some of. Yes, sir.
Senator, thank you very much for this clarification on and where you stand on this. In the light of it and in the face of it, RUGA in itself is not a bad idea. I understand there's an economic and business side to it that clearly has some prosperity. But in the space of all the killings and the insecurity that's going on in the land, I guess the genuine and general fear of the people is the fact that the government had proposed and put forward a project that was looking to designate land predominantly really to a group of people, if we're being honest, the Fulani herdsmen, that a lot of people felt had caused a certain level of insecurity around them. Now, fair enough, not every state was told to do this and not every state has to, but we cannot dismiss what the government did in Benue State, for example, where when we spoke to a spokesperson from the Benue State government, Teva Akase, he told us that the federal government came in, took land and started implementing against their own state land use act. So isn't it a time where the government really needs to be focusing on matters of insecurity rather than proposing projects that seem, first of all, partial, and second of all, seem to propose a certain level of insecurity in Nigeria that the people cannot take any more of? We have had thousands of killings, over 2,000 in 2015 alone. In 2014, let's not forget that the Global Terrorism Index named the Fulani herdsmen as a terrorist group or organization. So with all these issues compounding, why was this even a subject that the government felt should be addressed at the forefront at this matter in time?
Thank you very much. Let me say that this land that were to be requested, not taken, the land in the state belongs to the state. And unless a state voluntarily gives land, the federal government cannot forcibly go in. So it was not a situation where the federal government says it will come and take land or use any of its lands. That's number one. Number two, that land in the local belongs to the local government. Federal government cannot go there to take. It is if you are willing to give land for this purpose. That's number one. Number two, these lands are not to be allocated to Fulani herdsmen. It is to be allocated by the state government for the federal government to provide these facilities for farmers to go in and graze their cattle or goats or raise snails or grow fodder for
Senator,
goat,
please do hold your thoughts.
So
I'm sorry to interrupt you. We do have to go on a very quick break, sir. Do hold your thoughts, Senator. We'll go on a very quick break, and when we come back, we'll come back to this discussion. Stay with us. Welcome back to the program. Still with us is Senator Ita Enang, Senior Special Assistant to President Buhari on National Assembly Matters. Welcome back to the program, sir. Sorry we had to go on a very quick break there. You were saying?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm saying that these lands are not requested for Fulani herdsmen. It is wrong. It is very, very wrong. The lands are to be requested for farming, integrated farming, for the development of national grazing reserves, which are otherwise called, sometimes in another word, as rural grazing areas, as according to how it was invented. And let me say that we already had rural grazing areas, and they're in existence. There is the Obudu Cattle Ranch. Obudu Cattle Ranch is a rural grazing area. It is now taken as a national grazing reserve. It is not Fulanis who are raising the cattle and the cow and the goats and other livestock in Obudu Cattle Ranch. It is run by the Cross River State government. You have a grazing reserve in Ekiti. You have the Yankari. Those are grazing reserves. And again, finally, let me just say again and again and again, these lands are not to be allocated to Fulani herdsmen. It's not to be allocated to herdsmen. It is to be allocated for farming. That is, like we call it in the South, farm settlement. In a farm settlement, you have a situation where you have people growing grass, people growing, not grass, people growing grains, people having goats in one side, people having cattle in the other side, and it is not only Fulani cattle that is being reared everywhere. Now, please take this very seriously, and I want Nigerians to take this very seriously, very, very seriously. In the University of Uyo in Akwa Ibom State, in the University of Abuja, in almost every university in Nigeria, we have Faculty of Agriculture. In those faculties of agriculture, you have Department of Animal Husbandry. You have also in Department of Faculty of Veterinary Medicine. Now, what do they teach these children who study animal husbandry or who study agriculture? It is how to raise animals. they are not all Fulanis. Nigerians, my brothers, my sisters, my statesmen, they are not all Fulanis. They are my brothers and sisters and my daughters. I'm an Akwa Ibom man. I could choose to raise cow, to raise cattle, to raise livestock, goats, sheep, snail, fish everywhere. They are not for Fulani herdsmen, sir. Now, please let me draw attention to the 2019 budget. This 2019 budget. And I draw your attention to page 313 and 312. Before I even read the provisions in this budget, let me say that the National Grazing Reserves, or the RUGA thing, is not the only thing that the federal government budgeted for. It budgeted for some of this in the middle belt of the state, middle belt of the country. I will mention the areas if you want. In fact, let me mention it. It is the area that the RUGA was approved for are Kogi State, Kwara State, Benue State, Taraba State, Plateau State, Nasarawa State, I think Kaduna, then Borno, Yobe in the northeast, and Sokoto and Kebbi in the northwest, northeast and northwest. I think about 11 or 10 states. So the southern states, where this issue is even arising, should know that this first phase of the program is not including any of the states in the south, and it's not covering all the states in the north. Now, what the federal government has done is to say that in the south, it is mostly growing the palm crops. It is growing other things. It has provided for promotion of development of oil palm value chain in the southern part of Nigeria. It has provided for veterinary and pest control services, 2 billion naira. It has provided for oil palm value chain, 732 billion. Irrigation and crop development, cashew value chain, sesame and other seeds. Then it comes to provide on page 313, the sum of 2.2 billion naira. And this budget decides to call it National Grazing Reserve Development, not RUGA. But for security reasons, as part of a means of managing security, to allow to create a grazing belt where you have water body, where you have rainfall, enough rainfall.
Senator Enang.
Then the federal government decided to do it in the middle belt. Now there is finally, there is the provision of 6 billion naira for rural roads and water and sanitation, which is still to aid and help agriculture. So it is not, the land is not for Fulani herdsmen. And this proof, yes, sir.
Senator Enang, well, I find the clarifications you have offered useful. But I tried to ask the question yesterday that, you had an audience of law students who at the moment are preparing for their final exams starting next week. And you said that annually you talk to them about matters of law. Now, of all issues related to law, I was wondering why you had to dredge up this issue of cattle grazing reserves as a very important issue. Was there any motive, behind this? And if there is any motive, what exactly did you seek to achieve? Knowing that, of course, that meeting will be covered by the media. And then many northerners, refer to, you talk about rural grazing areas as an acronym, but there are northerners who have said there's something called Rugan Fulani. That's how they say it. And, they link this Rugan thing. They don't talk about Ruga. They say Rugan Fulani. They link it directly with the Fulanis, knowing that Fulanis are predominantly the cattle herders in Nigeria. And then, of course, I hope you are aware that this whole thing that causes controversy came out of the proposed National Livestock Transformation Plan that was worked on by the National Economic Council, led by the Vice President. And Dave Umahi, who was, in charge of this particular committee on ranching, said they never at any time mentioned RUGA, that they talked about ranching, cattle ranching, and he addressed the media on this. And he also made it clear that it's supposed to be optional to states who are interested. But you seem to be giving a different version of the story. Why is there so much inconsistency on the part of government in terms of communicating this idea to the public?
Now, please let me explain this. One, when I host law students, they raise questions to me on any matter that intrigues them. Last year, coincidentally, last year was the question on the Land Use Act, something akin to this. And I brought to them the question, I drew at their attention in last year's interaction with the law students who graduated last year and were called to bar, to the fact that land under the Land Use Act is owned by the state government and the local government. I drew the attention to Section 6 of the Land Use Act, that land, and on the Land Use Act, the local government is in charge of lands in the urban, rural area, and the state government in urban areas. And I drew the attention to the fact that the federal government only owns land in the federal capital territory, or such other land that any state government has given to it for its purposes. That's the only one it owns. Now, on the question whether there is inconsistency, I want to say there is nothing inconsistent about this. Ranch, whether you call it ranch or RUGA or anything, it is still a means of raising livestock. It's a question of nomenclature. It's a question of, it's a sensitive question. Now, I will not get into the question of controversy of the Fulani word, because I'm not very proficient. I'm not very familiar speaking Hausa or Fulani and language. So I will not know that. But you know, any word that has been in existence for a long time can be claimed by a people. I know that you, Dr. Ruben Abati, knows what is tro. Tro is
Senator Enang, let's take a short break.
What is afu?
Let's take a short break, and then we'll come back and you can continue with this line of thought. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Still with us in our Abuja studio is Senator Ita Enang, Senior Special Assistant to President Buhari on National Assembly matters. Senator Enang, you were talking about nomenclature, and I hope that you will also later respond to the question I raised about inconsistencies in government's public communication process.
Yeah, I don't think there is inconsistency in the communication process. It's a question of understanding. Is a question of understanding. And this question of RUGA or farm settlement or ranch is a question of nomenclature. Like I've said, one of the first sets of RUGA in this country is Obudu Cattle Ranch. It is a rural grazing area. Now, fortunately for me, I hosted students from Cross River and Akwa Ibom states. And one of the students I hosted, a lady who raised she didn't raise the question, but in the course of it, she answered, she responded that she is from Obudu and that they have a cattle ranch, and that if that is RUGA, that there is nothing wrong with it, because in Obudu Cattle Ranch, you have residential areas which are where people go as a resort to visit and to rest. You have other animals being raised there. It was the first set of RUGA, but it is now called a cattle ranch, and it is not owned or manned by the Fulanis. Now, it is manned by the Cross River State government and managed. Now, the question is nomenclature. Now, how does the word RUGA acquire a Fulani, permit my use of the word again, I said I wouldn't want to go into it. How did it acquire? Any word which has been used by a people for a long time, a lot of people who do not know will think that it was invented by them. Even a lot of people, I've asked a lot of senior journalists, a lot of lawyers, a lot of even my colleagues. They say that RUGA is a Fulani word. And I myself, I must confess, let me again confess, that my limited knowledge, I came to know what RUGA is only when this matter arose. I repeat again, I, Senator Ita Enang, a lawyer of good standing, did not know what RUGA meant until this word arose. I did not even know of rural grazing area. I knew of grazing reserves under the Land Use Act. So if I, who, unless and until this matter arose, I never heard of the word RUGA until this question arose. And I now went into research, and I now looked at the laws, you know, the laws, the 1966 laws, the 1956, and the laws prior to prior to independence, the 1963 laws of the Federation, and looked at all this agricultural development process. Only then did I start to know. So there is no inconsistency in government communication. It is a question of nomenclature. And what His Excellency, Governor Dave Umahi said is correct, that this is what they planned. Ranching. Ranching is rural grazing area. Ranching, whether you call it rural or urban grazing, it is grazing. It came from the whites. And I'm sure you read the book Animal Farm. You've read George Orwell's. You've heard of the song. We used to say, birds of England, birds of Ireland, beasts of every land and clime, hearken to your joyful tidings of a joyful golden time. It shows that what was prevalent at that time was grazing of animal and raising of livestock in very rural areas of the United Kingdom. It is not, you won't find any cow, any goat, any of these livestock. It is an offense even to keep it in your place because it causes infection. It's unhealthy to stay where you keep cow or goat or unless it is pet like cow. So all I'm saying is that it's a question of nomenclature. There is no inconsistency in government communication. And I repeat again, I did not know what RUGA is until this question arose.
Senator, thank you very much for this clarification. Before we move on to other discussions, let's take one last question on this. Now, there seems to be a serious disconnect between the Senate and the people. Unfortunately, it's been the case for a long time. Now, of course, in a matter like this, when it comes to RUGA, rural grazing areas, or whatever the case may be, one would like to know that the Senate is also working to produce bills that may not exist that protect the people and ensure people that they can feel more protected around new schemes that they feel may make them more vulnerable. An example would be ensuring that, or giving states the ability to create migration commissions, let's say. This is an idea that could be posed to the Senate. Migration commissions whereby every state has a migration commission to know exactly who is coming in and out of that state, for that state to feel more secure. This is just one of several ideas that can come to fruition. Another would be regional databases, encouraging states to create regional databases so that states can start to keep track. This way, citizens and states are not going to necessarily feel as though they don't really know what's going on, because as it really stands, nobody knows the numbers in states, nobody knows who is coming in and out, and really and truly, that is very, very unsafe for the people. So is the Senate doing anything to try and pass bills that can support schemes like this? Because genuinely, these are ways in which we can use intelligence to actually reduce the insecurity or reduce the feeling of insecurity for people all across the nation.
Well, let me say that not just if I understand, I don't quite get the question, but I think the idea I make out of it is what is the Senate trying to do to curb insecurity in Nigeria? Is that the question? Is
the Senate trying to pass any bills that can genuinely support states that feel unprotected by schemes such as that of RUGA?
Well, the Senate is very sensitive, and I want to commend the leadership of Senator Dr. Ahmad Lawan as Senate President and His Excellency Ovie Omo Ogege, the Deputy President of the Senate, and indeed the leadership of Femi Gbajabiamila and that Anwase as Speaker and Deputy Speakers of the House of Representatives. The 9th National Assembly is very responsive, very, very amiable, very, very active in matters that affect people and security. I will not say that they are trying to pass a so bill or so bill because I do not comment on a bill unless it has been passed. unless it's a matter that already it is before the president, unless there is a misunderstanding. So I do not descend into the arena of the Senate to say that doing this and that doing this. But what I want to assure the public is that this Senate will deliver and has delivered. And the leadership that has emerged is leadership that has great long experience. They have seen the good and the ugly and the best. They have seen the Obasanjo years. They had worked under the Yaradua years. They had worked under the Jonathan years. They had experienced the first term of President Muhammadu Buhari, and they are in the next level. So therefore, they are going to be very, very active and alert. And I'm sure you see the level of sincerity, commitment, and sacrifice that they made in sitting back against their planned holiday to work and clear the ministerial nominees. I'm sure you saw what may not have happened in a long time. What may not have happened in the last 10 years, the Senate sitting on Friday and sitting on Mondays to do so. This level of responsiveness, you will be sure, and has given Nigerians the confidence that this Senate will deliver and that they are working in tandem with the aims and objectives of His Excellency, President Muhammadu Buhari.
Sen Ita Enang, I like the nice things you said about the Ninth National Assembly and your description of the principal leaders of that assembly as responsive, amiable, next level Ninth National Assembly, and all of that. But other Nigerians have a different opinion. They think that this looks like a rubber stamp National Assembly, and that perhaps will make your work easier as the presidential liaison person between the presidential villa and the National Assembly. But tell us, I mean, that ministerial confirmation process, the screening process, it went so smoothly. About 22 persons, took a bow. Others were all, just mollycoddled. Do you want to let us into some of the behind-the-scenes activities that went on and how you managed to, make the process so smooth, lobby the lawmakers, as it were? Is there a story behind the story that should be of interest to Nigerians?
Well, any story behind the story is a trade secret. My job as a presidential liaison is to make sure that the measures of Mr. President and the executive and all the ministers, and all the ministers, ministries, and parastatals go smoothly before the legislature and go through the legislature. And so that is it. But on taking a bow, it is a privilege that is extended to any person who has been in the legislature, unless there is anything that has happened after the person has been in the National Assembly. And National Assembly means House of Representatives and the Senate. That, yes, it was part of his role to sit and screen and clear people. And he sat and cleared people. And he was found fit to contest and win election by the Independent National Electoral Commission. There was nothing untoward that was found about him when he was in the Senate or House of Representatives. And so let him take a bow and take his privilege. There is what is called, that's a privilege. And that was extended to His Excellency His Excellency Right Honorable Rotimi Amechi, the Emeritus Minister of Transportation. Now, because when he was a speaker...
Emeritus Minister, that's a new one.
Of the Rivers State House of Assembly, he was a minister. That's an Emeritus Minister of Transport.
Yes, I said that's a new one.
Former Minister of Transport. Now, yes, okay, yeah. Now, you also found out that there were persons who were not asked long questions. Like if the first nominee that appeared, I'm sure you saw his presentation, Uche Oga of Abia State. They were taken in alphabetical order. Now, you saw the other nominee that appeared, Emeka Nwajuba, a former member of the House of Representatives, the chairman of TETS Fund, former chairman of TETS Fund, because having been sworn in as a member, and a serving member of the House of Representatives. You saw the presentation and what the women, the stuff the women are made of.
Yeah, but Senator, women were asked to take a bow on the basis of them being women. Remember on the first day with Mrs. Sharon Ikeazo, it was reported that she was told to take a bow because she was a woman. So doesn't that then just weigh down and water down the entire process?
No. It was a privilege that was extended because, one, there were background issues that were involved. And the background issue is that His Excellency President Buhari that nominated them did very serious scrutiny on the nominees and their backgrounds, their performance, their achievements, those who were governors, their records in their states, and so on. And there has been no conviction of any of them that you can say. And if there is any allegation, whenever you are up for a public office, if you want to know anything about yourself, put yourself up for election or public office. Every person that has a pen and paper or a computer or is on the social media, he will be an expert then. He will come and invent even things that you'll be surprised about. Ruben, you've been an actor in this matter. You've been a presidential communicator. You've been a situation where you managed the image of the government. And you know that things, particularly social media, they invent so many things against and about persons who are in public office. When you are in a private office doing your business and it doesn't affect the public, nobody's interested. In fact, whatever you do, that's your business. Now, all this had to be taken account of. Now, coming back to the nominee that appeared. Look at the personality, the person of His Excellency Godswill Akpabio. The presentation and action of Fashola, the Emeritus Minister of Transportation and former governor of Lagos. Now, whom will you question here? And now, the women were not asked to take a bow because they are ladies. No. The Senate said, we have looked at your credentials and your performance. We've looked at your CV. You've looked at your past records. Some of you were ministers, some of you headed places, some of you were
Sen Ita Enang, that much is very clear.
Yeah,
but just before we go, quickly,
Quickly, it doesn't mean that they had no question to answer. It doesn't mean that it was because they are women, because women are respected and they are not undervalued. Yes, sir.
Well, thank you very much. We'll have to bring this to a close at this point. But we've enjoyed having this conversation with you very much. Thank you,
Thank you, Senator.